Every religious group disagrees on everything, even prayer, except one thing, fasting. Meaning it is that powerful from a physical standpoint, but from a spiritual standpoint, it's how God can speak to us.
This is StRest. I'm Kerstin Lindquist, health coach, author, and Emmy award-winning TV host. I've committed to helping people reduce stress through impressive health science, attainable mindset change, and biblical truth. Let's have a real conversation with zero judgment and endless solutions that you can use. You aren't alone. You can do this. Let me help you reduce stress and make room for rest.
You know how you meet those people and then they say, you should meet this person. And that person says, you should meet this person. And that person says, you should meet this person. That's how I got to Dr. Dan Pompa. And I am so thrilled to introduce him to you. He's somebody who has truly shaped how I think about healing and detox and God's ability to help our bodies restore themselves. Dr. Dan Pompa is a global leader in cellular healing and intermittent fasting. He's a man who's not only studied the science, but he has lived through it in his own health journey. It's all pain to purpose for him. For more than 2 decades, Dr. Pompa has been teaching the principles of true cellular detox, helping countless men and women reverse chronic conditions, regain energy, and reclaim their vitality. His message is both scientific, and here's why I love him even more, spiritual. He is a man of God, and boy, do we talk about it. We'll be diving into his story. We'll be diving into fasting and all the things that you want to know. Fasting and hormones, fasting and diabetes, fasting and cancer, fasting and surgery, intermittent fasting versus long fasting. We talk about it all. It's time for me to introduce you to a man I've been waiting for, Dr. Dan Pompa.
Stay with us. There's so much more to come.
I'm super into the research right now when it comes to creatine and collagen. In fact, let's talk creatine for a second. And the one that I trust happens to be Ancient Nutrition. Research shows that women naturally have 70 to 80% lower creatine stores than men, which means we're ideal candidates for it. And collagen we know is important not only as a protein, but it's also great for joint health. And I've been feeling the joints a little bit more. I'm in my 40s. I have that cold shoulder, women's 40 thing that there's a lot of different things we can do, but it's really important to pump up your collagen. So I'm doing the two together, collagen and creatine, and there's actually a new product from Ancient Nutrition that puts the two of those together. Creatine is one of the most clinically studied supplements, and it's a game changer for women's wellness. It supports cognitive health. That's what I love the most about it. Muscle endurance and recovery, and it helps you build long, lean muscles and strength while staying sharp. And then you pair that with clinically studied collagen, which is what we get from all of our Ancient Nutrition products, and that can help you improve your joint comfort, your mobility, and your recovery. I take it right after a workout in the morning, and I still also love multi-collagen proteins and those peptides in my coffee every morning as well. So support your brain and your body and your beauty every single day with Ancient Nutrition so you can look toned, you can feel strong, and you can stay sharp. Here's what you do. You go over to ancientnutrition.com and put in the code STREST20. That's STREST20, STREST20 at checkout, and you'll get 20% off site-wide. Get your collagen, get your creatine, get your Ancient Nutrition. Dr. Dan Pompa, I am so blessed to have you on the podcast. Thanks for joining me.
Hey, you almost missed me. It landed on my assistant's calendar, not mine. That's why here I am with the hat. I've never done an interview with a hat on before. So
what does the hat say?
It's a Charlie Kirk thing.
Oh, this is the turning point.
Yeah.
It's a good color on you too. I really like it.
You know what? It's red, but it kind of looks pink in your scenario there.
But I don't know. Pink might be your color. I'm just saying it's a good color. We were connected through Admiral Doug Fears, one of my favorite guests that I had.
I love him.
Great, right? Amazing man. Go back and listen to that episode if you haven't heard already. And he said, if you want to have the best conversation about fasting, go talk to Dr. Dan Pompa. So here we are.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I've been into fasting since the 1990s. That ages me a bit. Back when I was into fasting, and I traveled to every fasting clinic, the people that would fast people for like 40 days and, beyond. And I just had a vast interest in it. But when I was into fasting, nobody was except a small group called the Natural Hygiene Society people. They were a group of vegans, vegetarians, which I wasn't. So I didn't fit in. The only thing we had in common was fasting and the love for it. But anyways, back then, I mean, the 90s, of course, but even the early 2000s, and fasting was so not popular. If you said, "Oh, I went 5 days without eating and just drinking water," they would be like, "Well, how did you live?" I mean, that's how fasting was just not in vogue. So right now it's a little bit in vogue. However, that said, people are screwing it up. They're doing it wrong. So that's why we're going to have this conversation.
Exactly. And that's exactly what I want to talk about is what is the right way to do it. All the misinformation. And you know what? I wouldn't even call it misinformation. I would call it every body is different. And so you hear all this information and you think you can do it one way, but really for your body, you should do it a different way. But first, I want you to tell me why fasting is a cellular fix.
Look, so many amazing things happen during a fast, right? So you have this incredible reset of your DNA. First of all, I believe humans are meant to fast. Uh, you know, Ancient cultures were forced into times without food and times of famine. Today we have constant food. I'm not saying it's the best food, but we have constant food supply, right? Even the poorest of people, especially in the United States, right? I mean, yeah, they eat at convenience stores. And they might do better not eating at all. But point is they have food. So times of fasting, obviously we get this autophagy that also happens. So we get a DNA reset, but we have autophagy, meaning the body gets rid of bad cells. They're called senescent cells, zombie cells. These cells that live too long, ages prematurely, drive inflammation and other chronic diseases. And fasting is this natural process to get rid of them. And something else happens called mitophagy, which means we get rid of bad mitochondria. And now today we know that mitochondria, the cause of cancer, bad mitochondria, the cause of premature aging, no energy. I mean, you can go down this long list of all these bad things that happen when you have too many old mitochondria. So fasting clears them. Here's the best part. When you clear a bad senescent cell, you stimulate the production of a stem cell and replace it. So imagine how many bad immune cells build up over time the older we get. And then you end up in more hyperimmunity, autoimmunity, aging prematurely, once again, because of these bad immune cells. Well, imagine if we could clear them and start over with a new one, a naive immune cell that's not overreacting, not driving hyperimmunity, et cetera, et cetera. Well, that's what's happening during a fast. And also you reset your microbiome. You have a hormone optimization that takes place, almost a reset in your hormones. Okay, is everyone convinced to fast? Okay, but here's the negative. Fasting is a stress. You said something at the top of the show. You said, I guess we're still at the top of the show. A moment ago, you said that let's not call it bad things or myths. Maybe it's just that we're all different. You're right. So what is in vogue right now that is a stress, just like fasting, that could be beneficial, but you have to apply it to your uniqueness? Well, it's cold baths. If a
Yes.
woman does a cold bath like a man, I promise you she'll end up in a negative, more inflamed state. And meaning, oh, 2 minutes is what you do, 3 minutes is what you do. What? And then people do it. And it's, the key to cold baths is you have to adapt this incredible stress that your body literally thinks it's going to die. And the only reason you maintain a benefit from it is if, that's the key word, you adapt. If you don't adapt to the cold bath, it becomes this massive negative that unfortunately you don't typically realize till the next day or two. And then you never associate it because when you stepped out of that cold bath, you were so pumped, you were so jazzed, you felt so good. So of course it's good. And you may or may not have slept better depending on what your, ring score was or whatever, how you track your sleep. But
Because total side note, because I love cold therapy. I just got back from Montana, one of the most closest to God places that I think I've ever been. I was speaking at a women's in faith and health conference. And the first thing I do when I go somewhere new is ground and find a body of water to get into. But in Montana, the water is the coldest I have ever been in.
Yeah, very cold. Yeah.
I was probably in there for 30 to 50 seconds. Because usually I do a warmer because I am a woman who's still cycling. What are your thoughts on cold?
So I think, again, my thoughts are it's a hormetic stress.
Mm-hmm.
The premise of hormesis, people have to understand fasting, cold baths, hot saunas. I could go down a lot.
Even weightlifting, right?
Exercise. Listen, exercise only works if you adapt to the stress of exercise. That is the premise of hormesis, that a biological system adapts to a stress. If it adapts, you get stronger, faster, smarter, etc., healthier, all those wonderful things. If you don't adapt, you become the opposite. You become slower, weaker, more sick, etc., more inflamed. So exercise is probably the best example. When you go to the gym, if you stress your body, then you adapt to that stress. It's great. That's why when people first start exercising, it's a new stress. They adapt and they get stronger and they make results. But after a while exercising, they're doing the same exercises, typically, if they don't have a trainer, and it doesn't even become stressful anymore. So then there's no adaptation forced, and therefore there's no getting stronger. And so you plateau and eventually actually start to go down in your result. Okay, the opposite is typically true. People are over exercising. They do more and more and more. They're exercising far too much for their ability to adapt. They're not sleeping well enough. They're not getting good nutrition, et cetera, and they're not adapting. They're protein deficient. And so the exercise that they're working so hard starts to work against them. How do you know? They're more fatigued. They're needing more stimulants like coffee and energy drinks. They're getting little injuries all the time. Oh, it was just this because I lifted this. I did this. I did always an excuse, but you're getting more injuries. If you monitored your sleep, you'd notice HRV, heart rate variability dropping, heart rate going up. Point is that a professional trainer focuses all on the athlete's ability to adapt and work up that stress level to the adaptation. But when they see the athlete not adapting, they quickly bring the threshold down and start stressing the athlete less. People don't do that. Okay. They just do the same or more, and it's a negative. Cold bath, same way. So people do whatever it is, 2 minutes. They don't take into account that they just traveled and their body's under tremendous stress, and therefore the same minute that they do in the cold bath is far too much because they're already under tremendous stress, and then they end up sick, never associating it with the lack of adaptation for the cold bath. Okay, so fasting. So now all these people are fasting. They're daily intermittent fasting, where they're eating one meal, maybe two in a small window, and they're not literally adapting to that stress anymore because in the beginning it worked. They lost weight, but now they're not. Or they're doing longer fasts and they're not adapting. So I go to these conferences and I'm saying, wait a minute, the feast is as important as the fast, meaning just like ancient cultures, when they fasted, they feasted. When they had it, they feasted. When they didn't, they didn't. So we're fasting too much, not respecting this incredible stress that fasting is. Once again, the body thinks it's going to die. And that's where you get the hormone optimization, same as a cold bath, same as exercising. That's where all these amazing things happen. But remember, you have to adapt. So if you're fasting too much, women can't fast like men. Women in menopause can't fast like women out of menopause. You get the point. All these things have to be taken into consideration. Cold, hot, exercise, fasting. There's the foundation for our conversation.
Absolutely. So, what is the difference between intermittent fasting, which you were just talking about, and then some of the types of fasts that you do, that you talk about, that you use, that are longer water fasts, 3-day fast, 5-day fast? What's the difference there?
They all have benefits if done correctly. So extended fasts, where I like at least 5 days or 5 days for most people. And there's a reason for that because of what happens with growth hormone and autophagy. It takes people typically most people 4 days to get into what we call max autophagy. Now, reminding you what autophagy is, that's your cells, your body getting rid of all the bad cells that age you prematurely, right, and cause disease.
I like to say it's like the little Pac-Man cells
Um,
eating the bad cells, or the zombie cells you might have heard them called.
yeah, exactly. And most people, most of your listeners probably know what that is. But so when you hit max autophagy, it's about day 3 and day 4. We measure that. I got this from Thomas Seyfried, measuring how in fasted states, how tumor cells shrunk. He noticed that at a 1-to-1 ratio, that, and I was in a mastermind with him, and I said, Thomas, why can't we use that in general, looking at when someone hits max autophagy? He's like, well, you could. I'm like, okay, well, then I birthed that concept of when your glucose and ketones hit this 1-to-1 ratio. So let's, meters like Keto Mojo, they measure glucose and ketones. So you get up in the morning, you look at your glucose, let's say it's 90, okay? And then you do your ketones, and let's say it's 3.4. Okay, so you would take the 90 glucose, divide it by 18. You think I would just have the numbers down, but I'm making this up as I go along. So let's see. So 90 divided by 18, okay, that equals 5. That means that your ketones would have to be 5 to be in max autophagy. Okay. So that's that 1-to-1 ratio that we're striving for. When we hit that, we know we're now in max autophagy. It takes at least 4 days for most people to hit that. So now again, here's what you're not considering though. Glucose should trend down during a fast and ketones should trend up. When that's not happening, the body's not adapting to the fast correctly, and we pull somebody out of a fast and typically say, okay, we need to do more work before we fast again. So that's why monitoring those numbers is really important, especially in a daily fast, or especially in an extended fast, but they can be used for intermittent fasting, which we're going to talk about next. But so that's why I like a 5-day fast, because it takes that long to get into max autophagy for most healthy people. And we want to hit that max autophagy. Now, when you get up there, some people's ketones will be 6, 7, 8, and then their glucose is dropping. Some people get down to the 30s, and I get the text, oh my gosh, am I okay? I'm like, well, what are your ketones? 8 or 9. You're fine. How do you feel? Great. Yeah. So glucose will trend down, ketones will trend up, and you go through that max autophagy point. So that's the extended fast. And now, hold on, one more point.
Yeah.
Extended fast can be pure water, but you better have some fasting kahunas to be able to do pure water because it's more stressful.
You don't just jump in after never fasting into a
No,
5-day water
and it's
fast.
better to be in ketosis ahead of a fast, so you're already in fat adapted. Another whole point there. But most people, it's best to start with what I call partial fast. Walter Longo made this popular with the fasting mimicking diet, Prolone. It's a partial fast in a box is what Prolone is, which is very useful. But the problem is some people that are more challenged can't use a lot of those foods, so they have to do their own setup, which is basically keeping under 1,000 calories a day, and for most people under 20 grams of protein a day. And then you can fit your foods, and you're going to be under about 50 grams of carbs a day, but that's going to happen naturally because of the calorie drop. But those are the rules to apply for an intermittent fast. I mean, for a partial fast, meaning you can be eating, you're just eating much less. You're in a famine state. Walter, the scientist from Italy, says people, it's better. In our study, we see more people with more autophagy in a partial fast than a water fast. So therefore it's better. Not so simple. I argue Walter, and I love him. I'm not challenging him. I just have a lot of clinical experience instead of lab experience. So clinical experience says that most people, if you put them like their study into a water fast, will not do well because it's too stressful for them and they're metabolically very broken. So I would agree. The autophagy will be better for someone and less stressful and easier for them to adapt to the stress of fasting in a partial fast. So most people should start in a partial fast and they'll get better results, more autophagy. And then you could evolve to a water fast where I get far more autophagy during a water fast because I'm used to fasting. And then you could step into a pure water fast. So, and then there's dry fasting, which means no water, no food. And that you get 3-to-1 autophagy if you adapt, meaning your body needs water to survive. So it breaks cells down rapidly, especially fat cells, to get water. And that's why you see so much benefit from dry fasting, no food, no water. But again, very stressful. You better be careful.
So, what about the people who say you shouldn't be fasting, you're starving yourself, or it's just plain unhealthy?
Yeah.
What do you say?
Those people do not understand that our bodies are meant to go through times of fasting. Every ancient culture did. So shame on them for even saying such things. But that said, I think if they would say, well, I can tell you this person came in and they fasted and, they're so bad right now. Yes, because remember my point. Fasting applies to hormesis. And just like the disasters for cold baths, these women say, my thyroid is never worse. My hair's falling out now, blah, blah. Does that make cold baths bad? No, it makes you went over your limit. You didn't adapt to the stress. It became negative. So that's what I would say to that person.
Fasting and hormones, that's one of the things that we hear a lot is, and I will just preface this with 40-ish. I'm 47 now. 40-ish is when I started really fasting. And I could do it one way. And then I hit perimenopause and I could do it a different way. And now I'm getting closer to menopause and I have to do it a different way. So I've definitely seen that hormones are impacting the way that I fast.
Yeah. And as that's true, because see, hormones help you adapt. So no different than the cold bath, right? It should be different at perimenopause than, when your hormones aren't going through a change. So fact is your ability to adapt has lessened. Because why? It's not a bad thing. It's just your body is adapting, already forced of the stress of adapting to hormones. It's normal for estrogen to start to go lower. It's normal for all of these hormonal shifts that are occurring, and your body has to adapt. People that are having a heck of a time going through perimenopause and menopause aren't adapting well because of typically toxic stressors that are keeping them from making that adaptation. Add one more stress, be fasting, cold baths, and it could be enough to tip the bucket over. So you're right. You need less. You need less cold in the case of cold baths. In the case of fasting, I would say maybe partial is much better for you, right? If you're daily fasting, which we're going to talk about, maybe it's instead of eating in a 4-hour window, it's eating in a 10-hour window, you see? So you have to change the way you fast depending on your body's ability to adapt.
You get, though, a woman like me who has seen such amazing benefits from fasting. And I feel so much better when I'm fasting. And then I hear somebody like you say, you got to feast and maybe you got to cool it on the fasting and just do 12 hours for a while. And I'm like, how is that possible? Because I'm feeling so good. But you say for hormones, maybe you do need to pull it back a little bit, right?
Yeah, exactly. And like the cold bath, if you're not measuring heart rate variability and heart rate, etc., your sleep, your deep sleep, then I say, how do you feel like the next day, right? How do you feel after a day of fast eating one meal? What's your body doing? Is it losing muscle? Is it holding on to fat? Do you notice that you're getting more belly fat or maybe hip fat or like the place that you hate where you start putting fat? And you're saying, I'm eating less. I'm eating 5 days a week, one meal a day. Why? Well, because to adapt, your body is starting to tap into its muscle to hold on to its fat. It thinks it's starving. So by adding feast days in, where you actually feast, now there's 3 ways to feast, and I'll explain it because some people have trouble with one, you move to another. But it reminds the body it's not in a starvation mode because that is a very stressful place to be. And then you hormonally de-optimize, and then you get hormonally worse. So feast days can be magic for especially women in perimenopause. I can tell you from clinical experience that most of them do better with 2 or 3 feast days a week where maybe they eat 3 meals that day. Oh my gosh, I can't even imagine. I don't want to eat when I wake up, right? So maybe it's a shake that you make, a healthy one, right? A smoothie or something like that. But more meals can be a feast, which at the end of the day means more calories, right? And that's one of the reasons why intermittent fasting works, because it's a way to get less calories at the end of a day, but eat to full. Because if you caloric restrict and don't eat to full, your body will think it's starving like that. That's why caloric restriction diets don't work long term. They work short term, but not long term. Intermittent fasting can be the same thing, even though it takes longer. After a while, the body will go, oh, I'm starving. I'm starting to feel like I'm starving. It will keep its fat and burn its muscle. Metabolism goes lower. It's part of the survival mechanism. And all these things hormonally bad for you start to happen because the body's going, I'm going to survive and save your life. Oh, but add feast meals in. So add 3 meals a day in as a feast, 2 or 3 times a week. Watch the magic happen. The weight will start coming off. Here's a big one. People that are really low carb, watch what happens when you add a couple feast days in of the week where you eat high carbs. Watch what happens. Bodybuilders do this all the time. They're low carb, low carb, low carb. And then they carb load before the competition. You know why they do that? Because they wake up and their body just crushed fat, and they wake up vascular and lean and, with less fat. It's a trick that works. So in my doctor group that I train, we experimented with these things, right? So especially in the women, this was amazing. We would, they're intermittent fasting, and then we would add a feast day and check their ketones the next day. Day 2 after, ketones would go like this. Why? Ketones are a byproduct of fat metabolism, meaning when you go back into a fat burning mode, ketones rise up. Happened every time after feast days. Why? So the day of, your ketones are going to drop, meaning you're eating more carbs. So you see a low ketone, and because your body's burning the sugar, why would it burn fat? But what happens is you come out of that as massive fat burner. Why? You remind the body it's not starving, it starts burning fuel again. That's it. Like, here's the analogy I give. If you were in a cabin in the middle of Alaska, we'll say Montana, okay? You're in the middle of Montana, freezing cold winter. This winter is worse than ever. Now, you had the normal wood supply you needed to make it through a typical winter. This winter is much worse. So your wood supply is dwindling through the winter. Now, are you going to burn less wood or more wood as the pile is diminishing?
Less.
Less. Your body does the same. Why? Because you want to survive.
Because you want to,
That's
you
right.
want to
So
reserve
you're going to
some.
say, I'm not going to keep it at 70. I'm going to keep it at 55 to make it through this winter, because you have no way with this winter of chopping down wood, getting wood. So to survive, you burn less wood. That's the metabolic rate. Your body does the same thing. But a friend comes by on a snowmobile, like, oh my gosh, I have plenty of wood. I can even get it here. So he dumps this whole new wood supply off. That's the feast day. And all of a sudden you go, now you're going to keep burning it, keeping your temperature at 55. No, you're going to burn it back up to 70 and burn more wood because you have fuel and you know it. You're not going to die anymore. That's the analogy. That's what feast days do. So I have like my 5-1-1, my 4-2-1. That means like 4 days of intermittent fasting, lower carb, if you will. And then maybe it's 2 feast days and then 1 fast day where you don't eat at all, or maybe you eat 1 meal, right? So, you mix it up, feast famine. Right now I'm doing feast famine, feast famine, feast famine. So today I'm eating 1 meal. Yesterday I had 3 meals and even higher carb. Tomorrow be feast again, fast again. And there was a scientist, Kerstin Verde, who I interviewed years ago, and she did a study. She was one of the first, at least that I saw, that feast famine beat out every diet, low carb,
Wow.
paleo, for weight loss and weight loss resistance. Why? Because it's a stress even to your microbiome. In the adaptation of the feast famine, it breaks people through weight loss resistance. And it has the principle of that hormone optimization, reminding the body it's not starving.
And it's first man stuff. I mean, honestly, that's what they did.
They did.
You didn't always have food. And when you finally killed I was going to say beaver. I
Feasted.
don't think it was a beaver. It was
Yeah.
whatever it is. They ate it all because they were starving.
I've
And
never
then
heard anyone use that as the example of the killing.
beaver came to my head. Why are they hunting beaver?
Maybe they did. They would put it this way. If
They'd eat anything they
you'd
find.
eat anything if you're like going on.
Starving.
I was in Africa 3 different times, and I was blessed to go into northern Zimbabwe and right near the Zambezi River. And this tribe had recently come down out of the mountain. Why? Because it was a absolute famine, but also a major drought. So they came down. They weren't culturally fit yet, like all these other tribes. Like they had clothes, they had World Vision helping them, giving them grain. They actually had a lot of the same diseases that you would see, right? The people that brought me there said, Dr. Pompa, we have to ask you, this tribe barely eats, but they have no disease. They don't even have words for the diseases that the other tribes do or we do. They don't have words. It didn't exist. Like no cancer, didn't exist. Heart disease, none. Osteoporosis, 0. So, this is a tribe that feasts famine. I spent hours asking them through my interpreter, like about their diet. I changed my philosophy on diet from what I learned from this tribe. They were just doing what they did. There was no, like in the pictures I have, there was no men in the pictures. Like I even said at one point, where are all the men? Oh, they were out hunting. They got up at 3 or 4 in the morning and they went for miles and miles. They didn't carry water. They didn't carry food, and they would come back with a kill or not. And if they did have a kill, to your point, they feasted.
Yeah.
If they didn't, they were fasting.
Speaking of disease, I do want to get into cancer and some of your story, but first I want to talk about diabetes. That's one of the groups of women that I hear a lot. I can't fast because I'm a diabetic.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I would say this: you can't fast like someone else can fast, but you can fast, right? Like that's where we utilize partial fasting as an entry point. And again, a partial fast is under 1,000 calories a day, under 20 grams of protein, and you can evolve that around diabetes. Do it all the time. What it does is it creates what I call mitochondrial fitness. Remember, diabetics have a problem with their mitochondria, where they make and burn fat for energy, where they make energy. And also they have a problem with cellular inflammation. A lot of diabetes is toxin-induced diabetes, which I call TIR, T-I-I-R, toxin-induced insulin resistance. And toxins also can be responsible for why someone ends up with type 1 diabetes. So toxins plays, I think, 80% of all diabetes. So be clear about that. That said, then you become a diet issue because you have to make dietary changes. But fasting is one way that we stress the mitochondria to get rid of the bad ones, and through autophagy, create new ones that are better, more efficient at using fat for energy, as an example, utilizing glucose efficiently, right? So you have to get rid of the bad mitochondria. And with very toxic people, that strategy has to go along with my detox, which is cellular detox, and these strategies that I call feast-famine cycling. And yeah, it works.
We'll be right back. Don't go away. It's just getting good.
Get off the hormone roller coaster. The swings in midlife can drive you crazy. Between temperature shifts and sadness, sleep issues, I found an herb that's giving us real drug-free relief. It's called Elevate Organics Shatavari. It's USDA certified organic and uses SRI 81 Shatavari, the only clinically studied organic form that's made by the same suppliers as KSM 66 ashwagandha, which I love. It's the real clean deal. It supports hormone balance, energy, mood, and overall vitality without hormones or synthetics. It's clean, science-backed, and formulated by a trusted team from some of the industry's most reputable wellness brands. You can find Elevate Organics Shatavari at Sprouts and other independent retailers nationwide, or on their website, elevateorganic.com. Use the promo code Kerstin20 and get 20% off at checkout. They've got delicious gummies, capsules, and a whole line of products with Shatavari. Let's feel a little more balanced this season. Get Shatavari now. Use promo code Kerstin, Kerstin 20 at checkout. When somebody gets to, let's say, a 12-hour mark and they're like, but I start getting hangry, or I get, I get the shakes. What do you say?
I would say, well, could you go out and run 10 miles right now? I mean, maybe some people would be like, yeah, but most people would say no. I would say, well, with a little bit of training, maybe you can run a half mile today. Maybe not. Maybe you can run a mile. With a little bit of training, you could get up to, believe it or not, running 10 miles. Well, that fast that you may be trying to do, or 12 hours is your example, that could be like trying to run 10 miles for your body right now, meaning you shouldn't try to do that right now. You actually get hurt. You actually cause yourself more damage. So what do? You do what your body allows you to do, right? That may be, just extending your morning 1 hour instead of eating right away, or eating a meal at night. With diabetics, we tend to realize that skipping a night meal works better. So maybe it's eating dinner at 4 as opposed to 6. Okay, all right, I was able to do that. All right, great. Do that for a bit. And then maybe it's 3. And then you're not, oh, wow, now you're fasting from 3 all the way. You see how that works. It's no different than a good trainer would work you up slowly to get you to adapt to higher, more and more and more and more stress. And with diabetics, it's typically better on the evening side of things. Now, it's kind of hard, though, because that's family time. Sometimes people don't want to miss dinner. So I still would say it would work on the morning side. You could still do it with breakfast, same way, either side.
But aren't our bodies more, or the impacts of our food is going to be lessened if we're eating it earlier in the day? So isn't it better if we're going to be skipping a meal to skip it in the evening?
Yeah, I think, like I said, for metabolically challenged people, for sure, I find that to be true. I find socially it's hard.
Yeah.
And again, as a good trainer or health coach or practitioner, doctor, our goal is to get people to comply, right? So it still works in the morning by pushing out the morning, and there's reason for that. And someone who's metabolically healthy typically get a very good response from the morning. Most people wake up not hungry because their body just burned fat all night, and cortisol is still elevated, the dawn effect, meaning your body uses cortisol, wakes up, you get a little glucose dump. That's why your glucose is always a little higher in the morning. It's normal. And you're kind of surviving on that. So to push a meal out beyond that's pretty normal.
What about fasting and cancer?
I think it's very, very helpful. I think there are cancers that, again, fasting's a stress. I think that you have to be more cautious fasting with certain cancers. I think that Walter Longo, the gentleman, the scientist, Italian scientist I mentioned earlier, has proven that fasting for cancer is amazing. But even with chemo, they noted that because it makes good cells stronger and it weakens the bad cells, the chemo is not as toxic to people in a fasted state. They have a lot of studies. I sat through a whole seminar of scientists from all over the world proving that very thing out. So whether someone's doing conventional treatments, fasting should be a part of that regimen. They proved it. And there's tons of literature on that. Now, there's also a lot of studies showing fasting's benefit in general, just for cancer, because you're getting rid of the bad cells. Warburg proved that in the early 1900s now that cancer was a mitochondrial issue and something we call an ancient glycolysis that this goes into, and that's just the way it makes energy, etc. But Warburg was taken out of context. Everyone thought, oh, he proved that cancer is an acidity problem. No, just because there's guys in red suits, it fires doesn't mean that they're part of the fire and starting them. So that's kind of the acidity thing, right? No, it was acidity was a problem because the mitochondria were making energy through this primitive glycolysis, creating more lactic acid, which put the environment in an acid thing. So you don't treat the acid. That was just the symptom of the problem. So people have that backwards, even to this day in alternative medicine. But he did prove that it is a mitochondrial issue, an energy, a metabolic issue that's happening today, especially. And again, I link that to a lot of toxins that drive the mitochondrial issue that lead to this problem. So fasting could be an incredible thing.
What about before and after surgery then? Same rule would apply, I would assume.
Or yes. Well, here's the thing. Depends on how long after surgery. Right after a surgery, oftentimes you want to build some tissue, be in an anabolic state. Depends on the surgery, but so a higher protein would be appropriate, and then fasting later. So with people that are very sick and challenged, a lot of things that we recommend oftentimes, if people have cavitations, they need a cavitation surgery where it's an infection in the jaw, but yet they have to build vertical bone. So we don't fast them for a while after that surgery. And the opposite pathway from autophagy fasting is a pathway called mTOR. mTOR is an anabolic pathway, meaning it's a building pathway. Bodybuilders love mTOR. Anti-aging gurus hate mTOR because of the studies that show mTOR ages you prematurely. So you have all these people that hate it, so they avoid mTOR. I think that's a big mistake. So the autophagy pathway they love because you're getting rid of. It's a catabolic pathway. But what I teach is both are amazing, and you need both for healing. Anabolic pathways, short term, are very healing. So after surgery, you want to be in an mTOR anabolic pathway for a period of time. And catabolic pathway is needed to get rid of the bad. If you stay in this pathway too long, problems happen. Do you remember the Biosphere 2 project? This was, they literally built this incredible biosphere where they had perfect water, perfect environment, perfect food. They were in there 8 people for 2 years. And they were going to prove that this was going to extend the life of humanity. They reduced their calories based on the principle of caloric restriction and this autophagy pathway, that it would trigger the SIRT1 gene, they would live longer. Well, it was a complete fail. They came out and they did turn on their SIRT1 gene. Problem was they were in autophagy too long, became catabolic, their organs shrank, their immune system dramatically lowered. Many of them had major problems after that.
Wow.
Failed. Showed you caloric restriction long-term, autophagy long-term, fail. Now, opposite is true. I mean, on this side is true too. mTOR. If you look at the average age of a bodybuilder who's always in mTOR, they age prematurely. I think it's like 63 or 64 years old. So mTOR too long, same thing as autophagy too long. But mTOR can heal you very, very rapidly in a short phase of mTOR. High protein diet. Oh my gosh, my joints feel better. Stay on a high protein diet, you'll stimulate mTOR too much. And by the way, feasting is mTOR. So anything that stimulates mTOR is considered a feast. I already talked about more meals. I talked about higher carbs, mTOR, but also higher protein. So if you're saying someone, I don't do well with too many carbs, I don't do well with more, you could also do high protein, like a bodybuilder, 1 gram of protein per lean pound of body weight. That would put you in mTOR, which would be what we want for a feast, but not stay there.
Is there a different makeup of the food that you should be eating if you are actively participating in fasting? For instance, we hear people will say, I can't fast, I'm going to lose muscle. And I would say, then we need to make sure that you're having enough protein and good quality fats. But what do you say? Is there a makeup? Is there a specific makeup of those feast days?
Well, I would say this, again, when you're fasting, you can't take in more than 20 grams of protein. Otherwise, it knocks you out of autophagy. That's why you have to keep protein under 20 grams. So you still go through autophagy. So protein intake. Now, what I would say about that person say, I can't fast because I lose muscle. I'd be like, no, you can't hold on to muscle because number one, you're metabolically broken and fasting fixes that. Number two, your assimilation is so bad that fasting fixes it. So I had my son, Isaac, who I can't gain muscle. I can't gain muscle. I said, fast for 5 days. Matter of fact, plan to fast for 5 days, but watch what happens even after the first one. During the fast, you're going to be texting me saying, I'm losing muscle. I'm like losing weight. I've lost 15 pounds, whatever it is. And I said, that's fine because I'm more concerned about the weight you're going to gain from muscle later. That's exactly what happened. He proved me right. Lost weight during the fast, which is what people focus on, but we broke the fast correctly. A week later, we feasted on high protein, put him in mTOR. And now for the first time, he was able to gain weight. So we utilize fasting to actually get people to gain weight where they can't gain weight. Sounds absolutely opposite, but it's true. And it's true because you're getting rid of a lot of even bad. So the muscle that you do lose during a fast, innate intelligence it will only be the autophagy, getting rid of the bad cells. Remember, autophagy is getting rid of bad cells, not good. So the body will utilize only the bad cells for energy. It knows it's that smart. And then it stimulates a stem cell to recreate those the muscle cells that weren't adapting. So you gain better muscle cells, which then you can put on muscle. You gain better mitochondria, which then allows you to put on muscle. You fix your metabolism that's eating your muscle. So anyways, all those things occur. You change your microbiome, which allows you to gain more weight because it changes how you assimilate food. I just gave you 3 huge reasons why fasting can actually help you gain weight when done
What
correctly.
exactly what I'm hearing you saying in all of this is it is a balance, and it's also about changing things up in your body. Part of what has become such a problem in the United States is that we eat the same way, we move the same way, which is pretty much not movement. We sleep the same way, we have forced unnatural light the same way all the time, and we're not challenging our body. The temperature is always the same. We're not challenging and changing things up in our bodies.
Yeah, people eat especially in the healthy space. I see it often more times. People eat the same 8 foods. And people always go, well, no, I don't. And yes, you do. If you track it, you're going to see that you eat the same 8 foods. Oh, and those are the same 8 foods that you feel you do okay with until you don't. But that's a problem because it creates monoculturing, right? We need a variety of food. That's why in my diet variation principle, all this I'm talking about is diet variation, right? Feast-famine cycling, 1, 2, or 3 feast days a week. If you fast for 5 days, you find another 5 days somewhere in the month where you feast, right? So, that's all diet variation. But also diet variation is changing your diet seasonally, right? So in the winter, it's a really good time to be in ketosis, or maybe it's paleo, or maybe it's even carnivore for some people, right? But in the spring, every ancient culture, here comes the berries and things, they would come out of that state and start to eat a higher carbohydrate diet. In the fall was always higher carbohydrates because of the food that was available. So there's diet shifts that occur. I'm going to be honest with you. I vary my diet probably less on seasons, although I think that is the optimal way to vary your
Absolutely.
diet. But I do it based on my travel. It's like I do it based on when I'm home, I definitely go low carb more, and I tend to be in ketosis more. But when I travel, I tend to eat higher healthy carbohydrate diets. So I vary my diet more often. But the varying the diet creates diversity in your microbiome, which determines your health, your brain health, your immunity. That's the more diversity, meaning the different bacteria that you have. That's the key for health. All these different populations, you gain it by changing what foods you eat and even changing macros in the diets that you're on. So yes, you want to change what foods you eat, but you also want to change your macros: high protein, low protein, high carbs, low carb. So that's diet variation.
If somebody wants to start and they've always been, I can't fast, it wouldn't work for me, but I want to start. How should they start?
I think starting first off, maybe you try getting into ketosis first. Okay. Ketosis is getting your carbs under 50 grams a day on average. Some people might need to do more, but net carbs minus the fiber carbs, You can keep the fiber carbs, but net carbs under 50. Typically it takes 2 weeks. Use some sea salt and electrolytes because you'll deplete yourself and won't feel good. If you're going to starting in ketosis first can get you your mitochondria, it acts as mitochondrial fitness. It can get it used to burning fat and using fat for energy, which means your fast is going to be easier, number one, and more successful. You'll get into autophagy sooner. So doing ketosis first, under 50 grams of carbs a day, and you're going to eventually go into ketosis. And if you have a keto meter, do your morning reading, and if it's above 0.5, you're getting into ketosis. Okay, so you can Google that and chat GPT on how to get into ketosis, but it'll tell you. Okay, so, but doing that prior to a fast, maybe for 2 weeks, at least for a month, being in ketosis, that's going to make the fast easier. Start with a partial fast, or maybe even with that, remember, that's under 1,000 calories, under 20 grams of protein, or you start with intermittent fasting. So you go into ketosis, then you start with some daily intermittent fasting that we talked about, right? Missing a meal, eating 2 meals in an 8-hour window. Maybe it's a 10-hour window, maybe it's a 4-hour window, but maybe you start with a 10 and go to 8, then to 6, then to 4, and then you do a fast. So if you're going to do an extended fast, I would recommend ketosis, some intermittent fasting, and then a longer fast, and starting with a partial fast. There's a good progression.
For you, what got you here? Why are you here talking about this?
Well, I got very sick back in 1999, and pain to purpose is why I'm here. So everything I learned in my own battle is what I teach today. So all of my cellular healing and cellular detox came out of that. Fasting, I had roots in already, and I expanded upon it. And my cellular detox and these fasting strategies that I teach are all part of how I get very sick people well. The body has an innate ability to heal. It's just figuring out, removing what's keeping it from healing. And I think that's where alternative medicine has gone wrong lately, especially. I feel that they're more into expensive tests and the next biohack or expensive thing. I'm not against any of it. But if you don't remove what is keeping the body from healing, you're not going to heal. I got my life back by realizing what was going on with neurotoxins and neurotoxic exposures in my life that led to what appeared to be an abrupt illness.
If you could come into anybody's home and change 3 things to help them be healthier, what would you do?
The water, not just a Brita filter, but an RO unit, because it takes out the drugs that are in your water unknowing, the fluoride that's in your water probably knowing or unknowing, and of course all of the other contaminants, microplastics, et cetera, that are disrupting people's health. And an RO unit is inexpensive and can be added to just about everybody's home with no problem. That would change. I would definitely also consider your air in the home, meaning 70% of homes have mold and the people in the home don't realize it. So I would absolutely assess your exposure to mold and mycotoxins, because too many people are sick and don't realize it's mold. There's something called an ERV, an energy recovery ventilator, that brings fresh air into a home and stale air out, and it can positively pressurize the home, preventing mold and the buildup of toxins that happen in sealed homes today. ERVs are code for commercial buildings, but not for residential. But every residential home should have one. I have one in this home, and I have one. I almost put the thumbs up again by accident. It froze my video again. Anyway, I think it's very, clean air, clean water are the basics, right? And then I would change what you're washing your clothes in. And that seems odd maybe to some, but what you're washing your sheets and clothes in, it's loaded with endocrine disruptors. Those are hormone disruptors. It's loaded with fragrances that have so many chemicals, they don't even have to tell you what's in it, because they're protected by certain IP laws to not tell you their intellectual property in fragrances. And so eliminating all fragrance from everything, your personal care products, everything you use in your home, what you're washing your clothes in is essential because of how toxic fragrances are. And it also you're breathing it in. But when you're wearing it on your clothes, you're not only breathing it in, it's going transdermally right into your blood. All those endocrine disruptors, all the fragrances, etc. Change what you're washing your clothes in. I can tell people when I meet them what if they're using natural stuff versus non-natural because I smell it. My nose knows it. Fabric softener, the worst. Get rid of it. So change what you're washing your clothes in because you're sleeping in it and you're wearing it all day long and you're absorbing it. It's a major exposure. Those three things right there, first step.
Where is the connection to what you do, doctor, and cellular detox? Where does that meet spirituality and your relationship with the Lord?
Well, look, when I was sick, my wife, she was literally on her knees several times during that. This particular time, she said, as clear as I'm speaking now, God spoke to her and said, not only am I going to get him well, but he's going to take a message to the world. And when she would tell me that, I didn't want to hear it. My exact words were, I can't even get myself well. How possibly could I do that? Or why would you put that on me? So I would get very angry. Here I am today, because of that. My wife was right, or God was right through my wife. So pain to purpose to a promise is what I like to say. Pain to purpose, but God had a promise and she held on to that promise, but that promise has come true. So for people hearing me now, pain to purpose, but God has a promise, in it for you as well. And that's what you hang on to. But everything that I went through, I believe in my heart, God gave me, right? I always say I'm not smart enough. God gave me my 5 R's of how you fix a cell. And it's part of the process that I taught doctors for many years. He gave me all of that, everything we just discussed and how it goes with my cellular healing and detox. He gave me that. So therein lies my confidence. It's not in me.
How can somebody connect with you? How can they learn more?
Well, Dr. Pompa brings you to my website, but Dr. Pompa is also my Instagram, where I have almost 1.8 million followers, and I bring information every day, maybe too much. I overwhelm you. And then if you go to Pompa program, there's a master class there you can watch where I talk more about my detox. So it's
How do you do that?
pompaprogram.com is what it is. So.
How do you do that, doctor? Because you have an amazing presence on social media. You are giving so much good back. How do you deal with the negativity that comes with being so present?
One thing, I just told my wife this yesterday. She said, because I did a thing about vaccines, right? And I guess there was a lot of controversy. She said, go in and answer the comments. Are you reading the comments? I said, no, hon, I have a rule. I don't ever read comments. And no offense, folks, but I don't. You know why? I said, it weakens me. I find myself doing videos to make everyone happy. And that's a weak state. So when I don't read comments at all, I stay in a very strong state. I'm just bringing what I think is, people need and don't care about that. But when you start reading comments, you try to please everyone. It puts you in a weakened state. So that's one way I do it. I don't care about what people say. And the reason but if I start reading them, I'm human. I will care and I will back down, and that's not a good place.
That's so good. I found myself doing that just the other day thinking, well, what are they going to like? What do they want to see? No, 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 no. What is God telling you to say? What is true to you? That's what you put out there. It's
Exactly.
really, really
And I'm
great
called
stuff.
to it. So I don't want to do things to weaken what God wants me to speak.
Amen. I love that. Dr. Pompa, thank you so much for being here. You helped so many people, and I was thrilled to have you with us.
We didn't even talk about fasting from a spiritual perspective because, that is one of my favorite connections. When it's beyond you, whatever stress you're dealing with, whatever it is, right? Family, relationship, sickness.
Well, we have a minute. How do you do that? How do you connect the two?
There's a place in the Bible and it's where Jehoshaphat, there was 3 massive armies coming out of the north, and it's in Chronicles. And Jehoshaphat did the right thing. He called a fast, called all of Israel together and said, okay, I don't know the answer. I don't know what to do. We're going to fast. And they fasted as a nation. And God answered them that basically I will come against your enemy for you. And that's exactly what happened. He turned them on themselves. But that's the power of fasting. It's because it puts us in a weakened state, but it puts God in a state of being able to step in for us. There's a phrase in the Bible, it's rak chazak amatz, and the English translation is be strong and courageous. And that doesn't do it justice. As a matter of fact, if you go through your Bible and find all the places, be strong, courageous, the most famous is Joshua 1:9, where here is Israel about ready to cross the Jordan, and they don't want to go. All they saw was 31 armies, and that's all they could see, and they wanted to go back, and God spoke through Joshua. Rak chazak amatz Israel, meaning, and I'll give you the Hebrew translation paraphrased. It means, look, I've got that. It's my strength, not yours. Step into me. Step into what I'm doing. And as we come to a promise, and you'll notice rak chazak amatz in the Bible is always spoken when someone's about to step into what God has for them, a promise. And then we get fearful. All we pay attention to is the fear, what we can't do, what will happen, what if, just like they did, right? Just like the Israelites did. But then God sends somebody, rak chazak amatz, I got it, not you. And that's where we are with a promise, right? So you might have a promise for healing, but I promise you the doubts come, all of the negativity. So rak chazak, God has it.
And I feel like fasting puts us in that situation where we are feeling so out of control. Your body's going, I need to eat, I'm out of control. And that's exactly where God needs us. Fully surrendered to him.
Rak chazak, he's got it. It's his strength. In a fast, we rely on him, not us.
Right.
And he steps in. In the Bible, when you look at every religious group disagrees on everything, even prayer, except one thing, fasting. Meaning it is that powerful from a physical standpoint, but from a spiritual standpoint, it's how God can speak to us.
Dr. Pompa, thank you for being here. It was great to talk to you. Coming up on the next episode of StRest, it's our final episode before December, when StRest is going to take a little bit of a break and we're going to do some re-airs of the best of 2025. But before we close things out, I wanted to talk to you about the season of Advent and how you draw closer to the Lord, how you find peace in his presence in a time when we're all rushing around trying to make everything perfect for the holidays and buy. Listen, it's where I lived for a very long time as a host on QVC, and still a piece of me is in that world. And there's no judgment here and there's no shame. It's just, how do we draw closer to the Lord during the season of Advent? How do you hear him better? We have Annie Moss from the Vintage Sparrow. She has a beautiful line of faith-based jewelry and inspirational bags that I created at one point. You've seen her on QVC, and she has walked a very, very hard path in her life through infertility and almost losing her husband in a dramatic situation. She was also a big part of ministry for a very long time, and she shares her heart in how we find some peace and calm in this season. What are the things that you can do to draw closer to the Lord and still have a very Merry Christmas for you and for yours? It's coming up on a very special and a little bit emotional episode of StRest.
If you're enjoying the show, don't forget to subscribe and leave a review on your favorite podcast platform. Your reviews help others find the podcast and join our community. Follow me on social media at Kerstin.Lindquist for daily tips and inspiration. And visit my website at www.Kerstin-Lindquist.com to sign up for our newsletter and receive exclusive content. The information provided in this podcast is for informational and educational purposes only and should not be considered a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Always seek the advice of your physician or other qualified health provider with any questions that you may have regarding a medical condition. The host of this podcast is a certified health coach and medical researcher, not a licensed medical professional, and the content shared does not constitute medical advice. While we strive to provide accurate and up-to-date information, we encourage you to do your own research and consult with your healthcare provider before making any changes to your healthcare treatment plans. Thank you for joining me on this journey to reduce stress and make room for rest. Remember, you're not alone. Keep coming back, share your story, ask for help, and give yourself grace.